Greetings, friends. It's Denise again with Denise's Dancing Paintbrush, and today I've got another collage from my fairy tale alphabet book, this one for the letter Y. And I've heard this one before in a Betty Davis movie, of all things. This one is called Trouble When You're Young. It's a Portuguese fairy tale, and here's how it goes. There once was a young, beautiful maiden betrothed to marry a prince whom she had never seen. Someday, when he was old enough to rule the kingdom, and she was old enough to rule with him, the prince was coming to claim her as his bride. The girl lived in a beautiful palace, but her favorite thing to do was to walk among the flowers in her fragrant garden. One day, a great eagle landed atop the tallest tree in the garden. "Good morning, fair princess. You have been kind and good, and it is within my power to grant you trouble when you are young or trouble when you are old. Which do you choose?" The princess was very surprised, since she had never before heard an eagle and didn't know which to choose, so she ran into the palace. That night, she asked her mother if she were to choose trouble when she was young or trouble when she was old, which one would she choose? Her mother thought about it and finally said, "Well, I would choose trouble when I was young, dear child. Because when you are young, things are easier to bear, but when you are old, the tiniest of troubles is very hard." The next day, while the girl was walking in her garden, the eagle came again and asked her to choose again. Remembering her mother's words, she answered the eagle, "Trouble when I'm young." The dear girl had hardly said the words when the eagle swooped down and carried her off by her pretty pink skirt. He flew over mountains and meadows and rivers and seas, all the while the girl feared he would drop her to her death. But finally, the eagle set her down in a strange land where she knew no one. She was hungry and alone, and since she had no money with her, she asked for work at the baker's shop. All the time she could see, the eagle was watching her from the nearest treetop. One day the baker left the shop, telling her to bake the bread when it was ready. As soon as he was gone, the eagle flew into the window and upturned the bread trays, spilled out all the flour barrels, and broke all the dishes. When the baker returned and saw all the damage, he beat the poor girl and threw her out into the street. The poor girl walked about the city looking for work again, and finally found work with the potter at the far end of the city. One day, when the potter went away, leaving her in charge of the shop, this time she closed the door and all the windows so the eagle wouldn't come in like the last time. But the eagle flew down the chimney and broke all the cups and saucers, plates and pitchers, and all the beautiful things on the shelves that were for sale. And then the bird flew back up the chimney just as the owner arrived. "What have you done to my shop?" the potter raged. And without waiting to hear her explanation, he beat the girl and threw her into the street. The unhappy girl walked the streets looking for more work, when at last she came to a royal palace, and there she asked if they needed a servant. The porter at the door was about to turn her away when the prince happened by and saw how very sad she looked. and told the porter to hire the girl to look after the ducks. The next day, all the ducks in the duckyard were dead because of the eagle. But the prince didn't want to see her turned out without any work, and so he told the servants to hire her as a seamstress. That day, the good prince was leaving to see his betrothed in a neighboring land whom he had never met. Before leaving, he asked each of his servants what gifts that they would like for him to bring back when he returned. When he asked the little princess, she only asked for a stone from the palace garden. This seemed an odd request, but he promised to bring it. When the prince arrived at the palace of his betrothed, he found everyone in mourning because the girl had disappeared while walking in her garden. The prince was very sad and stayed only long enough to buy all the gifts that he had promised to bring his servants, as well as getting a stone from the palace garden for the little seamstress. When the girl received her gift and heard the story of the sadness of the bride's palace because of her disappearance, she knew she was the prince's bride. The stone in her hand made her very happy, and she knew it wasn't something the eagle could destroy. For the first time, the prince noticed how very lovely she was because she smiled. He thought she was sweet when she was sad, but now that she was happy, he thought he had never seen anyone more beautiful. Because the prince was curious about how a simple stone could make this girl so very happy, he secretly followed her to her room and listened outside the door as she spoke to the stone. "Oh, dear stone from my garden path, how are all of my flowers in my garden growing?" Slowly the prince guessed who she must be, and then he burst into her room and said, "Are you my betrothed who's disappeared from her own land?" The girl merely smiled. Once she had told her story, the prince promised that her troubles were over, for now and evermore, and happiness was the blessing of the rest of her life. And they were soon married. As I do in most of my collages, I've hidden a few pictures you can see. There's a ballerina there on her knee, 2 dried leaves on the eagle, a bottle of sauce, a teddy bear, a woman's face, and a boy's face. There in the eagle are the 2 dried leaves and the boy's face. I hope you enjoyed this story. I do hope you enjoyed my fairy tale alphabet book, and you can check out the links below. Do come again and subscribe, won't you? Bye now.